PvP DL2 character guide list. Full disclosure, don't expect the character names to be pronounced perfectly. The tier list is based on my own experience with all of these characters. Ahead is mostly a quick snippet of each character for beginners. There's a lot more to say for each officer than what I offer. And just remember, this specific video and list are just for the chief position, not lieutenant. When a new character comes out, these are the 5 things I look for when evaluating the character. It usually takes a week or so of playing the character to really get a feel for them. The first thing I assess is their damage potential. Do they bring strong burst damage to the table? This is crucial in the current meta because it determines whether the officer can make a significant impact in battles. Are they the type that can wipe out enemies in a flash, or do they mostly do chip damage? Next up is stuns and combos. I look at how many stuns they can dish out and how long. Stuns are far too important in battle skills, overall need to synergize well. Are they equipped with strong combo moves that are easy to use and do good damage? Passives such as cows, where skills reset upon kill, are also very important. Crowd control is the third criterion. I want to know if their skills provide immunity to crowd control effects. As noted previously, stuns are game changers. Having that immunity is huge in terms of survivability, such as Daiken's Dance or Guo's Ravens. It's essential for survivability. The fourth factor is mobility. How fast does the officer move around the map? This isn't the most important factor, but it's nice to know if a character can move fast or has ways to close the gap between you and the enemy. Last but not least, we've got skill and attack range. What's the range of their weapons and normal attacks? This factor can greatly influence how you approach battles. Officers with extensive attack range can engage enemies from a safe distance, while those with shorter ranges might prefer up close and personal combat. Usually, melee characters are far more reliant on combo moves, where range can do a lot more burst damage. Zhuge Liang, since his release, he has been the new boss of the game. His abilities deliver very strong burst damage, allowing him to rapidly chip away at the enemy. His abilities can silence, stun, and trap the enemies. His skills chain together seamlessly. He can also create mirror copies of himself through his flash skill. Zhuge Liang's rock form grants him immunity to all forms of crowd control, making him incredibly difficult to pin down or disrupt during fights. Because of his strong immunity, he is hard to stun and easily moves across the arena. His skill and attack range are very wide, allowing him to engage enemies from a safe distance while maintaining his rock form to reduce damage and CCs. It'd place him easily S+ tier. Lubu was the original boss of the game until Zhuge came out. His damage comes from his combos. He constantly stuns the enemy and chips away at their health. It's his ability to chain combos that makes his damage top tier. He keeps enemies locked in place. Lubu's superior skills grant him resistance to crowd control effects, ensuring he stays in the fight. He has a ton of defense and damage reduction, making him very tanky to kill. Once he hits 1 HP, he becomes invulnerable to death for 5 seconds with a 60-second cooldown. Overall, S+ tier. Guo's damage output is decent, but not amazing. He relies more on his crowd control abilities, and his Raven to do chip damage. He dominates in stuns and surviving since his stuns are near instant. His skills synergize well and provide 2-3 seconds of immunity to crowd control. His palms are great ways to stun and combo by switching into a new officer. He has decent mobility to get around the map. Easy S tier. Zhuge's damage and stuns or combos are top notch and his attack range is impressive. You can pair him with SSX and that's an instant 100 to 0 for most enemies. His passive gives him 1 free immunity and 40% movement speed one time after an HP threshold is hit. He doesn't have the highest mobility, but can navigate the battlefield effectively enough to maintain pressure. Since he can get out of a stun for free at 40% HP and generate a shield. Zhuge's attack range is good, so you can combo safely and easily. Daiken received a massive buff recently. Her feather dance skill previously did not grant any CC immunity, but now it does. As long as you can hit her CC skill, her damage output is strong, and her ultimate deals a lot of damage at melee range. She needs to be melee range for max damage. Her 3-second CC immunity lets her escape stuns, if needed. Her mobility is good because of the immunity. Her attack range is moderate, requiring her to engage enemies at closer quarters. She gets an S tier after the massive buff. Gan Ning is the newest member of the DL2 family. His combos are insanely good, but a bit tricky to master. He excels in stuns or combos and has decent damage over time, and his ultimate deals a ton of burst damage. His mobility is good, and he kind of has 3 ways to avoid CC. One with his flash and also with his first skill, when he first dives but not when he swims around and when he uses his ultimate. Gan Ning possesses good mobility, allowing him to quickly move around the arena. He has a moderate attack range, favoring close quarters combat. He easily closes the gap with his skills. A plus tier. Genji is one of my favorite officers. Genji has an impressive attack range, but lacks in other areas. She doesn't have much mobility and CC immunity. Her damage is impressive. Her main focus is to get her crystal toward the enemy and shoot her ice beam towards it for extended range. Genji lacks CC immunity, making her vulnerable to crowd control effects. She doesn't need much mobility. Her skills has massive range and her ultimate, a massive AoE. Genji's attack range is impressive, allowing her to engage safely from a distance. CAO has decent stuns or combos and mobility. His combos aren't easy to land. He's more of an opportunistic officer where he has to either flash in and CC the enemy, or use his jump or stun while the enemy has no immunities left. His ultimate deals a ton of damage and stuns periodically. CAO lacks strong CC immunity, but can use his jump to evade and disengage if needed. His mobility is okay. CAO's attack range is moderate, favoring close combat. Taishi CI was once an S-tiered character. In my book, once zhuge came out, Taishi just couldn't handle the fights. Taishi CI is well-rounded but not exceptional in any category. He has strong combos and mobility. He can essentially blind with his yellow mine and knock down enemies with his red mine. He excels against melee officers, since they often get hit by your mines. His mines give immunity for half a second, which helps him avoid CCs. His red mine lets him move very fast if the enemy is nearby. His first skill lets him snipe half the arena. This is especially good against melee officers. He'd place him in the current meta as a tier. Huang Yuing's damage output is low, though her ultimate range is insane. It goes from one corner to the other, chasing the enemy and dealing massive damage. Her strength lies in her mobility, turret chip damage, and attack range. She lacks stuns and combos, but makes up for it with her mobility and her net, which prevents flashes and movement. Huang Yuing excels in CC immunity, which makes her difficult to control. She has one of the best mobility levels, allowing her to move within the arena with ease. Guan Yu is strong in CC immunity and attack range, but has a low damage output and mobility. He can knock down the enemy with his push, and that's about it. He is pretty tanky. In the hands of more experienced players, Guan Yu can be very strong, but I feel there are plenty of better options out there. Zhou Yan's damage output is balanced but not overwhelming. He relies more on stunning the enemy and using his burst damage. He has moderate stuns and combos, making him a versatile choice for team fights. Zhou Yan has good CC immunity and mobility. A tier Guangzhong's damage output is respectable. His damage comes from his turret mode, where his range increases dramatically, but he becomes immobile. He lacks strong stuns and combos, but his skill creates an impenetrable wall that stuns on contact. He doesn't really have immunity to CC, but his wall can be effective in keeping distance. Huang Zhong's attack range is excellent. A tier. Sun Shangxiang used to be my favorite, but fell off as new officers came out. She did get some buffs since her release, but nothing that makes her overpowered. Her damage output is decent, and her ultimate does a ton of damage. She is by no means tanky. Her CC immunity is limited, which can leave her vulnerable to crowd control. Her mobility is reasonable, allowing her to reposition as needed. She has a moderate attack range, favoring mid-range engagements. Once upon a time, she was S-tiered, but now definitely B-tier. Pang Tong's damage output is moderate. His strength lies in blinding the enemy with his skills and following up with his first skill. His ultimate is strong, if you can catch the enemy without a flash. Pang Tong's CC immunity is limited, which can leave him vulnerable to crowd control skills. His mobility is decent, allowing him to navigate the arena reasonably well. His attack range favors close combat. Once upon a time a plus tier, but these days, probably B tier. Zhang Liao is surprisingly decent as a chief, but he is best used as a lieutenant. As a chief, his damage output is moderate if you can land all skills, including his ultimate. He jumps similarly to CAO, but his second skill is just too slow to be useful. C tier as a left. Zhang Jiao is not worth using as a chief. There are far better options. His damage is okay, and his ultimate does pretty good damage, but trying to activate his ultimate is too hard. Keep him as a lieutenant. F tier as a chief. Sun Jian is garbage as a chief officer. His skills need some type of stuns, and his damage needs to increase. His ultimate as a chief feels like a nerf compared to being a lieutenant. Overall, keep him as a lieutenant. F tier as a chief.